Welcome back to the Agentic Insider. I'm your host, Philip Swan. In this show, we explore cutting-edge ideas and trends in AI and data, as well as hear from other industry thought leaders in the AI space. This podcast is brought to you by Iridius AI, committed to safe and responsible AI innovation. Let's dig in. Welcome to this week's edition of the Agentic Insider. With me and Alistair today is somebody who's worked on resources who are really looking to learn more about technology in the AI industry and helping people learn. She's a multi-award-winning entrepreneur focused on AI education for everybody. And she's a leader of her own self-titled consulting firm, and she's also a music artist who writes songs about empowerment. She's the founder and interim CEO of AI4All. Tess Posner, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So Tess, like we ask everybody else, what future are you solving for?
Yeah, I think about this question a lot because my work deals with young people. So it's all about kind of the future and the future that they're inheriting from us and the future that they're going to create. So I think for me personally and our work at AI4All, the future that we're trying to solve for is one where the benefits of a technology like AI are widely shared and it lives up to its potential to actually solve some of the problems facing humanity today. And I think that's kind of the promise of AI, is that it amplifies our ability to solve problems as humans. So I think my hope is that we can steer it in a way that it can do that for more people and that those benefits aren't just concentrated among the few.
I think that's fantastic. And I mean, you're the interim CEO, but you're also one of the founders for AI4All. So why did you start AI4All back then? What was what was the push that put you in that direction? Why did you want to take this on so strongly?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so actually, the organization was founded by Dr. Fei Li and Olga Rusakovsky and Rick Summer, and they were actually all at Stanford at the time. So Fei was running the Stanford's AI lab, and Olga was there with her, and Rick was also running several programs, and they all had this history together. And I think what Fei and Olga, being like premier researchers in the field of AI, really saw this opportunity for the technology to be something important about humanity and about the future, and at the same time seeing how the opportunities to get into AI were not widely available to everyone. So they actually just on their own, kind of a side project, started a summer camp for girls at Stanford. And that pilot was so successful that they decided to start AI4All. And that's when I met them and came on as the founding CEO. I was just coming out of some work being done with the Obama administration on tech hire, where we were helping all different communities across the US kind of tap in to the opportunities in the tech sector and seeing again how technology can be this incredible opportunity for upward mobility and economic opportunity, but often it's very concentrated. So I think the same ethos is kind of where AI4All grew out of, is like that very personal passion and experience of Olga and Fei and Rick. And then we, when I first joined, really taking that idea and taking the spark and the magic of that and expanding it out to other communities, other partners, other universities. And fast forward 8 years later, we've been doing this work for a while, and it's been absolutely amazing to see what our students do in the field, the kind of ideas and talent they're already contributing to the AI field is just super inspiring. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, I mean, you're really incubating and amplifying talent here, I think, which is fantastic.
I love that way of putting it. Exactly. Yes.
So as you're doing that, you're working with youth, ethics and transparency absolutely has a critical role here in everything that you do, right? So I know you've been working in AI ethics, since before it was mainstream, right? And it's so How have you seen the conversation around AI ethics mature, and what critical issues do you think we're still missing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's interesting when we first, AI is not new, though everyone feels like it is because of the explosion of the LLMs. But at the time in 2017, the conversation was kind of about I don't think we called it. I think we were more calling it AI ethics at the time. Responsibility kind of came a little bit later as like a buzzword. Um, and I think at the time there was a lot of talk about bias, transparency, regulation, like and governance. So how are governments going to think about this? How should companies think about it? Is this like a something that governments should control through policy? And if so, how quickly can that happen? Because policy often kind of is a lagging responsive indicator, right? So especially when you think about the US in particular, like a lot of this innovation is like shooting ahead of where policy is able to keep up. So there's a lot of debate about the role of the private industry in like safety and security, and then where government should fit in. And I think lots of debates about that and comparing the US to other countries like in Europe and in China where this is thought about very differently. And I think there was a good conversation about bias and how sometimes because was starting at that time to be embedded within different systems, like deciding who gets a job, deciding who gets through at the airport, immigration systems, policing systems, we were starting to see this sense of like, okay, if bias is baked into AI and then this is being kind of we're outsourcing decision making about these really important things, then some people might be adversely affected and AI systems could amplify existing societal biases, especially for certain like marginalized groups. So I think the conversation back then was kind of, get sort of ahead of its time, I guess, in the sense that people in the know and in the industry were already talking about a lot of this and doing great work and thinking about it. But then when the explosion of really when ChatGPT, I think it was December 2022, that kicked off this whole new era. And the conversation has evolved. Like you're asking, I think much more attention is being paid to this because everybody is experiencing it. Like I was just talking to my parents who are actively using ChatGPT and they are asking health questions, right? And it's like, I don't, how do we help people ensure that the answers, are correct? I mean, that's just a very basic thing. And so I think the fact that it's like touching all of us and that we are using it, however many hundreds of millions of users something like ChatGPT has, everybody's asking it different questions. And so whether they're using it for therapy, for health, for navigating a job application process, just loneliness, whatever it is, these things are touching all of us. And I feel like that's really important because now everyone's kind of asking these questions and seeing, well, is it accurate? Is it right? Like, how do I trust it? So I think what's happened is the evolution of these questions have gone from being like the experts talking about it to everyone being curious and kind of wondering about where this is all going and is it good? Is it scary? Is it bad? Um, of course, like there's a lot of hype too. So being able to tell what's real and what's kind of just the buzz is challenging.
It is.
Um, I do think one thing that I find very interesting is like the mental health aspect. So you've probably seen those articles recently about people like actually being hospitalized for chat GPT induced mania, I think they were calling it.
Yep.
So I feel that, to your point about what's being missed, I don't really know if we have clear answers or clear ways of dealing with the kind of human impact of these systems and the unintended consequences. It's like, well, we want it to be really useful, But if someone's having a manic episode, useful is driving them further into that manic episode.
Yeah. What I'm curious about, how do the students themselves, what insights do they have that have surprised you the most with respect to AI ethics? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, the students are so much of my inspiration every day. So our program, just to share a little bit more details, is right now we're running an AI accelerator program for college students, and they come from all over 150 colleges and universities across the US. So very diverse group from all over. And we basically teach them hardcore machine learning, coding skills so that they can actually start building and working on AI projects. So the second part of the program is they work on an AI project that they're passionate about. And I think this is where it's really exciting because you see already students bringing such different ideas and perspectives from their own lives. Some of the projects are like predicting Alzheimer's, predicting credit card fraud and how to better track that. How do you look at whether startups are going to be successful in the future and building an app to predict that? Certainly, that would be a valuable, a valuable tool. Um, Lots of things in environment and climate, I think, is of high interest to students. Some projects in music and creativity. And so we have like hundreds of these projects actually running right now where students are working with mentors in the field. And we really help them get this view of the responsibility and ethics piece. So saying this is a really powerful tool for solving problems, and they get to actually do that on a hands-on way, but also keeping in mind, like, okay, where are you getting the data set? How do you know if it's a good data set, whether there's bias in it? And then what are the implications of this tool? Where might it have unintended consequences? And so they're engaging with these ideas and they're building their critical thinking skills to not just work on the tool, but also thinking through those implications. So I find that really inspiring because I think, a lot of times young people are not always part of the conversation about AI. And they actually have so many brilliant insights to bring to it, just about like,
Mhm.
what should we be thinking about? Where is this going? What are they worried about? And there's a lot more than I can say there, but I think what I see every day is just how much power there is in including more voices in AI
Sure.
and seeing what if they kind of have the tools and the resources and the support, there's so much that they can unlock with those skills.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's, both Philip and I, I speak for him here, but we feel that the future is very positive. Okay, we see, one of the responsible AI principles that we have at Iridius is around human AI collaboration. We want this to be a way of being able to stand on each other's shoulders and use it as a way of amplifying and augmenting rather than replacing. To that perspective. And I think that, people coming into the workplace, okay, and seeing all of the companies now, using AI as an excuse to be able to shed large amounts of jobs, especially in the tech sectors, okay, with Microsoft and others. Okay, so how, we both Philip and I feel very positive about this. I know you do as well in terms of where the future is. So how do you see the future, okay, of the people coming into the workplace and the future of work from an AI perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually just held a salon in San Francisco, our first Future of AI Salon series, and we got together some of the largest tech companies and other folks that are really passionate and thinking about this. And I think it's interesting because on the one hand, you're seeing a lot of articles come out where it's like, oh, AI is going to take 50% of jobs. And there's just these wild predictions on all sides. And other people saying, well, actually, no.
Mhm.
It's going to be a much slower transformation. This is all overhyped. And I think the truth is nobody really knows, like the data and the kind of predictive analytics of this time right now is very challenging because our models are changing and we don't really know how it's going to unfold. But I've heard from like some people in the space that they're rethinking work itself from the ground up. And I think that's such an interesting idea because you're not just automating a piece of the workflow, you're rethinking the whole thing from the ground up. And whenever you're making such a big change like that, it can be a big opportunity. And it can be, like you said, humans in the loop, that idea, like, how do we redesign this in a human-centered way so that AI can support what the humans are doing and kind of amplify our unique contributions, but also the productivity in ways that maybe we don't have to do the rote tasks that we don't want to do,
Hmm.
or it can kind of create these efficiencies that make our jobs easier and hopefully better. But I think it will be a challenging transition just because change is always hard and different people will be affected in different ways. So what I care a lot about is how we kind of are thoughtful about the transition and who gets left behind, as these transformations of work are happening. And I think there's interesting work being done of how do we support society? How do we support young people? How do we support those that might be displaced in this transition while at the same time we're innovating and we're rethinking all of these pieces.
Hmm.
So I agree with you. I'm optimistic. And I think the future is ours to shape. And we have to be thoughtful about who is most impacted and how can we support them through this transition.
Yeah, I think that impact is really important. I mean, we always say that AI has to have an impact assessment. Whenever you build a solution of some sort or a system, to be able to understand who are the people going to be affected by it. Marginalized groups, okay, society, and so on, to ensure that they can be included during the build of a solution from the beginning, all the way through to the end and the ongoing operation. And I think it's the same with AI as a whole. Okay, as it moves into the workplace. Okay, there are a whole host of people who, to your point about what AI4All is doing, that you're working with right now, who have fantastic ideas and who don't have to be constrained with the way that things have been done for decades, or even especially with COVID and everyone moving out of offices so much. Okay, a lot of things couldn't have been envisioned until suddenly they were envisioned. And in so many ways, it's the same, I think, with AI, where you have a lot of opportunity to be able to rewrite the rules in a way that benefits society and benefits all.
Yeah, no, well said. I think that's the opportunity in front of us, and great change always brings great opportunity. And I think, like you said, the participatory approach is so important because, and I love that idea of a framework, and I think that's often missing from the conversation because people are racing to create things as quickly as possible and often not thinking about, well, what are the implications of this,
Absolutely.
and
Right.
having to go back on it later.
Yeah. I'm gonna one thing I sort of want to drill here as well. I know that you personally, okay, are into writing, producing, and performing a sort of cinematic dark pop, and I also know that AI4All has a focus on creativity, and especially as we're going into the idea of music, or especially with the augmentation that's now possible, that's moved into creation of still images, now creation of moving images, okay, and movies, and the ability to be able to use this as a tool for creativity, while also being concerned about, hang on a minute, whose copyright or whose rights are being protected as you go through all of this. With the people that you're working with, and I know that you put on, Accelerator and other programs and so on to help people think through these things and courses. How do you, how I guess, from the people that you're working with and from the generation that you're working with, how are they seeing this? And are they seeing this as a way of being able to do things they could never do before? Okay, and that they see that yes, there are barriers, but they can be worked through, or are they concerned about them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just went to a summit about AI, and one of the questions that we discussed was kind of like what, uh, kind of like tracing back different technological innovations and what we can learn from that for AI. And it was really interesting because this organizer had included young people and sort of like all generations. So it's multi-generational. And I think that, a lot of the folks in the older generations were very skeptical, where it was like, look at social media. We all had this hope that it was going to connect everyone, and then it ended up having these really negative consequences. And I think there's wisdom in what we learned from that. But a lot of the young people were way more positive about AI. And I think the opportunities and the creativity and,
Yeah.
there's like this sentiment of a lot of fear and fear of replacement amongst older generations of like, oh, I don't like AI art because it's really potentially replacing like this whole swath of people and jobs and all those things. But I think young people are they have more fresh perspectives. And my sense is, although it's certainly not like you can't really make a broad generalization. So there's lots of different perspectives. But it's interesting to get to hear from young people who are really feeling the possibilities of AI and saying, why are we limiting this based on past experience? Like, let's think about this differently.
Yeah.
And I find that really inspiring because it's like sometimes wisdom is important, but also sometimes like experience limits you because you think, oh, it's going to be like that before,
Mhm.
And young people
Yeah.
always have that way of breaking us out of what's come in the past and saying, this can be different.
Absolutely.
That's one thing we've learned the hard way very much here in building Iridius, is that old norms don't exist, right? We literally have to unlearn a lot of stuff. And what's ironic is stuff that we learned in the 80s and 90s are very relevant to AI today. And which brings us a benefit of our experience of bringing that in. I wanted to have steer the conversation a little bit towards bias, right, in AI systems, because you have spoken extensively about bias in AI development. So with all the rapid deployment, with all of these large language models and all the diversity issues that you've warned about, how are they manifesting itself in real world AI applications from your perspective? And the other side to that is, what examples of AI bias have concerned you the most, and how do we build better guardrails?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think we've seen a lot of different examples of this cropping up, unfortunately, where it's as simple as like in this searching for images of like a doctor or a lawyer and getting predominantly male images coming back, for example, and searching for a nurse or a cook and getting primarily female images. We've seen like examples of gender bias coming through these systems, and a lot of that has to do with how the data is trained, right? Because there is that kind of gender bias in society where people have associated certain professions with certain genders. And so if that's the data that's being fed in, there's that whole saying, garbage in, garbage out.
Oh yeah.
And, there's other examples of, one that really concerns me is around hiring. And so there's been some examples of algorithms that have preferred, Caucasian candidates, for example, over candidates of color.
Amazon's was a good example of that. Amazon's best example, I think, in so many ways, is like if you train it on data that you've been hiring, older white guys, then who knew that we were rejecting all of the diverse women, candidates and women and so on, because they didn't match the profile that you had trained it on. So before they threw it out. So there are so many examples of this. I completely agree.
Yeah, and I think that's something as we look again, it comes back to like the humans in the loop question, because we're outsourcing decision making. So if you're saying, hey, AI algorithm, tell me who I should hire. And then there's like so many different steps that the AI is going through where bias could creep in, whether it's like selecting, like how is it selecting? What criteria are you giving it to select? How is it being trained to do that? Is it being trained on just, like you said, your data set internally? And there's all sorts of pieces like that. I think also in the healthcare side of things where, if you're looking at the results of certain tests or trials, and you've only trained it on a certain group of people and not looking at minority groups or different geographies or different thinking about representation in the data set is so important in this. And also just being mindful of, I think you said it earlier, is like human AI collaboration. So how do we want to actually work with the AI? Are we just comfortable kind of offloading a lot of the decision making? And where is it that things can go wrong? And how should we be mindful about that design process? And I think it's easy to just say, well, if the AI can do it, let's just outsource it in that way. And it's unclear to me, it requires a lot of deep thinking and critical thinking about how to design, like we said, reinventing work itself. So it's like you look at the whole process of work and you see, where is the AI going to help? Where is the AI going to hurt? And then you have the name of your podcast, Agentic AI, is a whole other set of questions, because then you're really outsourcing like a whole process and not just a piece of it. So I'm curious to hear what you all think about that and what you're seeing, because it's that's a whole other set of questions that it brings up.
There are. I mean, I think people, I think, get very different between, get confused between agents and agentic. And I think that they're very, very much two different things. And there's a big trend at the moment to try and create using the LLMs or the foundation models to create a kitchen sink agent that does everything. So, I mean, now this one there not only slices bread, but it does the laundry. It drives to Costco. It takes the kids to all their different things. And now suddenly it's doing everything. And I think that the more and more things, coming back to the safety side of it and the ethics, the more and more things you put onto it, the more there are chances that something will go wrong, because the attack surface of this and the mistakes are become sort of exponentially greater the more things you try and get it to do. And I think, especially as we don't know exactly how you can never completely know exactly how a foundation model, because of its very design, came to an answer. Okay, in that respect, transparency and openness is fine, and you can disclose how things are happening, but the ability to look at this and think, well, explainability becomes difficult, because you just don't have explainability, and there's no real chain of thought that will get you there, because it's going to fake what a chain of thought looks like. And so now you're into interpretability. So I think for agents, when the more you add into agents, the more difficult life becomes, and trying to find one Swiss Army knife that's a therapist while also being able to be a gourmet chef, okay, it becomes a little bit more difficult when you try to have one size fits all. I think with agentic systems, then we're into a very different situation, because we're now talking about being able to create almost like a holistic system that can work to solve problems in a variety of ways. Okay. And that does not require a kitchen sink approach to this. It requires a multi-agent system fabric that then allows you to sort of spread the workload across a diverse group of different workers that can all, be intelligent. They can all learn, but they can grow, and you can focus them on individualized tasks. So your surface area is broader, but it is also then much more individualized to be able to sort of focus on where things go wrong. And I think then the orchestration, the coordination of those, when you're into the 10 million agents trying to do something, at that point, then the complexities really start to grow, and you end up trying to understand how on earth to be able to have these things, okay, work together, share entitlements, collaborate. Okay, all of those are very different things, because the way that you and your team work in AI4All is different than the way that Philip and I would work in Iridius, and different than the way people in GM would work, or people in Disney. And so the way that it shows up to help people, agentic systems to help people at home, would be very different than it shows up inside a corporation. And then it needs to be able to understand, well, this corporation has a different whistleblower policy than the other corporation. This one has a procurement policy that's different. This one uses Slack. This one uses Teams. So even all of the nuances of how an employee works in an organization and the terms of service that they have to abide by, at that point now you're into, well, Do we need HR? Are we having agentic systems and agents as employees? Do you need a manager? Do they need goals? Do they need performance reviews? There's a whole host of different things to go through here that I think amp the complexity up significantly. I don't know how you see this.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, what I'm seeing is this, when we think about the workforce and kind of the transformation of the workforce, as we were talking about, a lot of the conversation is, well, now we need to train people to oversee AI systems. And that becomes the new skill set where, like you're saying, as it gets more complex, that's actually a very challenging set of problems because you have to understand enough about how these systems work. It is this kind of manager role, and I think about that when I use ChatGPT is like some of the things I have to do with it are similar to like managing a team.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, okay, I guess I didn't give you like enough, specific instructions. And so what you returned back to me, I'm not happy with. And so now I have to think about, well, I wasn't clear enough in what I shared that with you and the feedback process. So it really is like using an AI and making it work and very useful for you. The skills to do that are in some ways transferable from like leadership and management skills. And then as you're kind of, like you said, mapping out this more complex system of agentic AI, when you have multiple agents doing specific tasks, then that becomes like more of I guess like executive thinking, right? Where you're having to think broadly about the system as a whole and then manage risks. How do you put what into what place? What is your tracking system? So it's really interesting that these are going to be the skills that people need to succeed. Even though the AI is doing most of the work, there's still a lot of work to be done to ensure that it gets done well and safely. And there is kind of this oversight.
Now, I'm just thinking there's a huge, you talk about the workforce development, but it all boils down to education, right? And AI literacy, right? And I, from stuff that I've read about you have argued on several occasions about that AI literacy is becoming essential, right? Something that's as basic as computer skills, right? So what does AI literacy look like, in your opinion, for somebody who'll never build a model but needs to work alongside these AI solutions, to augment themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think it definitely goes beyond prompt engineering, which is part of it, right? Because if you're going to make it useful, you have to understand how to ask the right questions. And asking good questions is actually a very important skill that not a lot of people have. And I'm not sure that our education systems really train people to ask good questions anyway. So that's for sure part of it. And then I think it's like kind of understanding a bit of what we were saying before, just about the explainability, the transparency. You don't need to have like in-depth technical understanding of these things, but you need to understand enough to know how it works so that you understand what's coming out. Um, because if you can't think critically about that, I mean, we used the example before of like health data, right? You don't know that this is just like, all right, it's giving you the most likely set of answers based on all of this data that it's been fed. But it doesn't mean that it can hallucinate, can be incorrect,
Yes.
not a replacement for a doctor. Um, I think that's incredibly critical, maybe more so than, I mean, you have to go to driver's ed to get your license, right? A car is a pretty powerful thing that you can kill people with if you're not careful. AI is maybe, I mean, we could argue like right now versus with robotics and things in the future of where it's going, but you need to know enough to not make errors that are potentially harmful to you and others. Um, and I think that's different than other systems where it's like, well, I turn on the TV, I can switch the channels. I don't really need to know how it works. I can just use it with a button. But AI is different because of what it's actually enabling us to do and how we're using it and what for. So I think AI literacy has to go a bit deeper than just like how to use it and more like how it works and how it might affect you, and you have to be equipped with that.
So back to education for a second. So I was on the board of, you know, our kids are adults now. But I was on the board, and one thing the head of school said once, Jefferson, if he walked into a hospital today, would be amazed at the development and progress that's been made since I was around. And he said if he walked into a schoolroom, he would be utterly disappointed that it's basically still the same as it was back then. So as you look at K through 12 education and beyond, what needs to evolve to prepare students for this AI integrated world, in your opinion? What needs to change?
I think, a lot of people are racing to figure out how AI can transform education. There's sort of like two pieces to it. There's AI education. How can people become informed users and consumers of AI? And then there's also AI in education. So how are students learning with AI? And I think those are two really important pieces that we're very much in the process of figuring out. To the first one, I think that it goes back to what we were just talking about, the literacy, giving students a chance to understand how these systems are built. And, for example, computer science is still only taught at 60% of schools in the US, which is just wild. That means 40%, almost half of the schools are not even getting exposure to this in high school. And that means, it's very difficult you can do it, but it's much easier if you already have that foundational computer science and math knowledge to be able to study computer science in college and end up going into these fields. So if you're not learning that and not exposed to that in high school, you're already behind by the time you get to college. And that means we're losing out on so many kids who might be really bringing a lot to this field, and just like getting that knowledge is so important to their own lives. So I think we need to just leapfrog that and teach AI at every single school. And there's no question in my mind that AI and computer science are essential skills, and that it's the literacy piece, but it's also giving a bit more of that depth and rethinking what are foundational skills for the future. And I think it comes back to this critical thinking and problem solving and questions as well. So in addition to using the technology and having the technical skills, we're entering an age of transformation, an age of change. We don't know exactly which jobs are going to come through, but we know that young people need to know how to ask the right questions, how to solve problems, how to be flexible and adaptable and teach themselves things, and how to navigate such a fast changing landscape of careers, of jobs, of technology. And that would be my hope for how education can be transformed, is less about the rote knowledge and memorization and skills, and more about these deeper kind of life skills that I think are going to be more essential than, your very specialized career technical education of the past.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, when you, so the more of the rote that's going on, the less people are going to have the skills that are needed going forward. I mean, I always talk about this as being, you have to be able to guide and have an interactive conversation, okay, with some of these models to be able to get what you need out, which means you've got to be able to have an ability to have the intellectual rigor of that sort of thought process, to be able to guide it and coach it and seek what you're looking for out of it. But at the same time, and you were saying the same thing here, I always talk about discernment. What it gives back is great, okay, but you have to be able to look at it critically. So there's a lot of situations right now where a lecturer, professor, school teacher will assign a 2,000 word essay on something. Somebody asks ChatGPT for a 2,000 word essay. It comes back and you just paste it straight in. There was no thought process in any of this, so you weren't really learning anything. But then the question is, well, hang on a minute. What if what it came back with was completely inappropriate? Okay, what if you were asking for a summary of Romeo and Juliet, and it decided to go and do Shakespearean love, okay, as an analogy? So it wasn't the right answer, but it decided to go and pick a film and analyze that. And if you weren't even reading it, or you weren't able to discern whether what was coming back was right, I think that's that skill of discernment. And then to your point earlier, it's a bit like having, you know, an intern that comes back all keen and has come up with something, and then you look at it and go, well, that's not exactly what I was looking for, which means I probably didn't give the right nurturing, the right guidance, the right coaching. So how can I help you be better, to do better? And I think that sort of those sorts of executive functional skills, almost like becoming a CEO of your own group of agents, is going to become super important, okay, for people in life going forward. Okay, whether it's medical to monitoring blood pressure and it coming back to whether it's just, you know, looking at finances and having your own sort of little, you know, your agentic system to be able to go off and see how your finances and your investments are doing. You've got to be able to discern what's being done, not just outsource it and forget it and hope that it's coming back correctly.
Yeah, no, I mean, well said. And it's exactly right. Like we're all gonna become CEOs of our own life, and how well you can manage that is going to be to either accelerate you in amazing ways, or you'll be left behind because you just won't know how to use these systems at all. And I think that's where school also, like, wow, can you imagine going to college and high school when literally the entire, like, all of human knowledge is just right in your pocket? Like it's a totally different age of where all the information is out there. So asking somebody to spit back that information is no longer a task there where you had to go to the library and like figure it out yourself. So then the question is like, well, how do you actually build those skills of discernment, like you were saying, and critical thinking and high level executive functions? And I think it comes down to experiences in the classroom, like using discussions, using oral presentations, using project-based learning. I mean, these are proven strategies that do build those skills, and they're available to almost any age. You know, obviously you scaffold them up over time.
Sure.
But I went to a college where we just had discussions and oral presentations, and we had to present math proofs at the board, and it was absolutely amazing.
But you know, when you talk about, you know, so this is AI for all. There are so many, all encompasses all. So there are so many schools out there that are not even teaching computer science, even in America. But then you go way beyond to globally, there are so many schools that don't have the scaffolding framework to be able to provide those skills. Okay. And I think that's where it ends up, you know, becoming, you know, quite important for organizations like yours to be able to provide that additional support, okay, and help people develop those skills that maybe were not provided even in some of the, you know, the better universities worldwide at the moment while they go through this own transition themselves.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be a need for more, like, faster. I mean, education systems are slow to change
Hmm.
because they're often complex and highly localized,
Yep.
especially like high schools, right?
Hmm.
In the US at least. And colleges too, they're massive institutions. It's not, you know, a tomorrow thing. They're going through this transformation themselves and figuring it out. So we're going to need these like alternative systems like AI4All and other similar programs that are out there to help fill in the gaps. And I think also companies have a responsibility to reskill their own employees and think about that. And I'm sure that they will because it's in their investment, in their benefit to do so. But we have to think bigger about this problem because the transformation is happening now, and kids need to be prepared now, and adults as well. I mean, I think it's not just for young people. It's also, I think about, I don't know, workers who have been in their jobs for a long time, and how are they going to get skilled up in this way if their job isn't providing it?
Exactly.
So as we wrap up here, thank you so much for you know, this time you've spent with us. We've really been an in-depth conversation and love it. But we like to finish off with some rapid fire questions. So
Yeah.
just quick, what one AI application are you most excited about, Tess?
Ooh, most excited about. I think I'm really excited about AI in healthcare. I think there's so much potential there, and having gone through some uh, health challenges personally in my family this last year, I think I see the potential of revolutionizing that,
Mhm.
revolutionizing care, effectiveness, greater speed for medical and drug research breakthroughs.
Yep.
And You are very much into music. You're a music artist. What song or artist is currently inspiring your own music?
Ooh, good question. Well, I'm a big fan of Florence and the Machine,
Oh my
and
gosh, me too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree.
love Florence and the Machine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
well, did you see she just teased some new music, so I'm excited about that.
That's going
Oh,
to
I
be
didn't see that. I'll need to look. Okay. All right. That's fantastic. And then finally, what do you like to do for fun?
Oh wow. Well, play music. That's like my most fun thing actually. Also mountain biking. I live north of San Francisco in the forest. Mountain biking, hiking. But yeah, music is kind of my obsession. So every chance I can get, I'm either playing or creating.
great.
That's great. We share a passion for hiking then. That's fantastic.
Oh,
And
amazing.
Tess, how do people reach you if they would like to reach you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, ai4all.org. They can find us on social media, AI for All. Connect with me personally on social media, on LinkedIn. Would love to connect and reach out if you want to learn more about our work or hire a young person from one of our programs. Or maybe you have someone who's listening, may want to take one of our programs, our AI education program. So please reach out to us. We'd love to connect.
Tess Posner, thank you so much for being such an amazing
Thank you.
guest. To our audience, thank you very much for joining us. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. That's a wrap on this week's episode of the Agentic Insider. Thank you for listening. For show notes and more, please visit agenticinsider.show. To learn more about Iridius, visit iridius.ai. We'll see you next time.